Um, I just did a live video. I need to do, I want to create a video of this and put this on YouTube, and so we have a permanent record of this conversation, because it's something that just needs to be said. It's kind of like that elephant in the room that you just can't, that you know about but no one else does. So you gotta tell everybody, because they need to know this, because it kind of affects how I feel about something. Nothing I did wrong. So here's the story. So my uncle Donald Bailey, and his wife Patricia Scully, they were married for several years. I don't know how many years exactly. 40, 50 years. I think about 50, at least 50 years. She was Catholic. My Aunt Pat was Catholic. My Uncle Don, I think, was Lutheran. So he ended up being the one that had to be converted. He had to become Catholic to marry her, and then you know, he was the genius chemist. She didn't work. She never worked. So she was the genius chemist. He was the genius chemist. You know, graduated from college, had his doctorate in chemistry at the age of 21. I think nowadays that's like, normally you're probably almost 30. Graduated from high school at age 16 or 15. So he worked for several years at one company. It was called Union Carbide in Buffalo, New York, and I think he worked in West Virginia too. I think for maybe a different company, I think. But he had several patents that his name was on, with silicones and carbides, and he was the chemist. So I remember this day. This was long before he died, but I remember my mom told me that let me rewind. My Uncle Don taught me how to fish. Basically, the family's tradition of fishing on the Platte River, and on the Betsy, and on Boardman, and River Road, what's the name of it? Rapid River. So fly fishing. So and you know, he lived in Traverse City when I knew him. They moved back, I think not long after my mom's dad died. They moved back here. So my mom's dad died in 1978, and my mom was like in her early 20s when he died. My Uncle Don my mom's dad only had one brother, and my mom was an only child. So, you know, my mom lost her dad when she was in her early 20s, and then, you know, and I never got to meet my grandpa. So my Uncle Don kind of became my grandfather, and he had no kids. My Uncle Don and my Aunt Pat, they had no kids, but you know, my Uncle Don was in the choir at St. Francis here in Traverse City, the St. Francis Church, St. Francis Assisi. So, you know, he was adamant, you know, Catholic, followed the Catholic religion. Well, was basically like my surrogate grandfather, was like my mom's kind of one of her only connection to her father's side of the family. Well, at one point, probably in the early 90s, he showed my mom that when he passed, his savings passed $1 million. He showed that to my mom. He was proud of that. It was quite a feat back in the early 90s. So that was, he was worth over $1 million. That was special. You know, he was my Uncle Don. I was 10, 12. I think when he died, I was about 15, 16. We would go up there several times a year. Christmas, if we were around, we would go up and have dinner there. He would be here. He would come out and work in our garden. We went fishing 2, 3, a few times a year. Um, so he started getting sick, and he started getting these sores in his legs. He would bruise his leg, and where the bruise was, it would end up the tissue would die and it would get infected. And then he ended up dying after a couple episodes of that. And and then when he died, we got to see his will. And in his will, my mom was he gave my mom a certain portion of his in the will. A certain portion was supposed to go to my mom. Well, the money would not go to her until after my Aunt Pat died. The will was transferred to my Aunt Pat, but this was my Uncle Don's legal rights that he wanted in his will. So my Aunt Pat, they had a friend, a priest friend called whose name was Father Mike, and Father Mike came out to our house a few times. I remember Father Mike vaguely. He was around occasionally. I don't know what kind of friends they were with him, but my Aunt Pat ended up, after my Uncle Don died, she went to a senior living home down in near Grand Rapids, and she lived. And this is right when I'm getting involved in basketball. I'm really busy. I'm in my high school days. I'm a basketball star. My dad's dad died, so I had to focus on something. So I was, my mom would go down and spend some time periodically and see her, my Aunt Pat. Well, my Aunt Pat died. I don't know how many years later, maybe 10 years later or something. And when she died, and they had been visiting with my Aunt Pat not long before she died even, and nothing seemed to have changed with their friendship. Well, it was after she died, we discovered that she changed the will, and all the money that was supposed to go to my mom went to the Catholic Church, and it was legally done. And it was an upsetting thing. So another bruises, more bruises. I don't blame the church because it was legally done. But what do you do? How do you let that not? It doesn't taste well. It doesn't. I'm not. It's not fun. My mom's the one that has to really deal with that. And I remember her being quite upset for a while. We got a lawyer, got Dean Robb. He thought it was going to be too much of a battle to try to win a case like that because she did it legally. So basically, she just went under my Uncle Don's wishes, who never was Catholic in the first place, who converted to be Catholic because of her, and then she gives all of his money that he worked for all his life to the church, and some of it was supposed to go to my mom, who basically ended up being like her, her father figure, my grandfather figure. So you got to understand that there's this deep-seated kind of wall in a way that comes. I mean, I respect the church. I've made a tile of the church, the Nidaros Cathedral window. I have churches in several of my tiles, Catholic churches. It's one of those things that how do you go to church and wrap your head around something like that? That something was supposed to be given to you, and it wasn't, and everything's supposed to be just okay. And I'm not mad at anybody, but I just think it should be known. And so when I talk about my Viking religion, my Viking heritage, I got a couple people that were getting involved in my artwork in the last few days, on Instagram and stuff, and they were motivated by their religion, and I'm just minding my own business, basically, right? Posting things on my page. So what I want to say is that for me to represent my faith, my heritage, I think it's a very good thing. When you think about the history of it all, the Vikings were basically viewed as the heathens, just like the Native Americans would have been viewed as the heathens, because, and then the Christianity came in, and with their faith and organization and mobility, they converted all these people, and that's how we have the civilized world, and we're not heathens anymore. But But in a way, when you think about it, then if you look at it that way, in a way, it's like the Norse religion. It's almost in a way it's almost like the backbone of the church. It's the roots of the church. All these people were converted. It wasn't always the most peaceful process. Lots of people died. Lots of torn, damage done. But that's life and history. But what I'm saying is that it's healthy to look at me representing this religion, this faith, this heritage, the Vikings, which Thor has been in many movies, Thor PG movies. Thor has been in many comic books. Thor is like is a figure that's like he's a interesting historical figure. So there shouldn't be any fear of this religion, of this Thor's hammer. It's a magical kind of thing. It's a spiritual, magical thing of mythology, of the Norsemen, of the people that migrated up into the northern parts of Europe, that figured out a way to survive in that climate and decided to live there and reproduce there and created a nation there. So it represents a very important part of our humanity. And the religion is just a sheet over it all. The religion is just a footnote. If they hadn't figured out a way to survive up there, there never would have been a religion up there. It would have been a barren land. Now it's people. So this is like the backbone in a way of the religion. All the faiths that were taken over by the Christianity, that were converted by the Christianity, they're all backbones of the religion. By me representing this, I graduated from a Christian college with honors. I was baptized Methodist. I went to a Methodist church for 6 years. I would love to get married in a historical place like the Nidaros Cathedral. So I just in light of the whole mess with my uncle's will and my mom and what she should have gotten, what the church ended up getting, I just think think that that my belief in this Viking religion and heritage, it's a good thing. All it is a good thing, and it creates a friendly contrast to the religion. I'm not a heathen. I'm not going to turn into a caveman and start, acting like people acted back in the year 1000. I mean, over 1,000 years ago. So I'm very proud to wear this. That's all that I want to say.